Director General Ternes, ladies and gentlemen, dear members and friends of EMFP. Welcome to Luxembourg and welcome to the opening session of the European Microfinance Week 2024. It's such a pleasure for us, after all the long preparatory work in the last weeks and months, to finally welcome you all here in the Abbey and also to know that so many people are with us online. We are, true to the tagline in the logo of the week that you see here, connecting the inclusive finance world here in Luxembourg and online. And after the record number of last year, we are very happy to have this year even more participants, with 662 people at the moment from 55 countries. It's the highest number we have ever had at the European Microfinance Week in our almost two-decade-long history. And I would like to thank you for your enthusiasm, for your trust and your loyalty in our work and in our conference. Thank you very much. We have, with your valuable help and support, prepared a quite impressive program for the coming 3 days, which reflects the prevailing trends and focus of the sector. There will be more than 30 sessions across several thematic streams, and I will mention just 3 of them: digitalization and client protection, financial inclusion for refugees, and data management outcomes and impact. But there are many more streams, and I really invite you to learn more about them by using our app. So please, if you haven't done yet, please download the app and you'll get a lot of information about the conference, and especially you can contact other participants of the conference. So very useful. One of the highlights of the European Microfinance Week is without any doubt the ceremony of the European Microfinance Award. And you are all invited to this prestigious event, which will take place tomorrow at 5 o'clock at the premises of the European Investment Bank. This year, the topic is advancing financial inclusion for refugees and forcibly displaced people, a topic that, unfortunately, given the current situation of the world, couldn't be timelier. One of the key aims of the award is for each year's different topic to collect and disseminate the most relevant and valuable practices so others may learn and replicate them. So with this in mind, we are delighted to showcase this week 2 publications which we have produced on the topic of the 2024 award. The first is, you can see it here, Advancing Financial Inclusion for Refugees and Forcibly Displaced People, Insights from the European Microfinance Award 2024, which presents a year's worth of work by the e-MFP award team and supporting consultants, and which was put together by our Sam Mendelsohn. It condenses the insights about the topic into a format which is accessible for those who don't work directly within it. And I think this is really the crucial thing about it. And it includes background on the topic, specific practical case examples of the 10 award semi-finalists, lessons learned, and factors for success. This is really a significant publication, to my knowledge, the only one of its kind that combines theory and practice and insight into a single place. And we hope you find it interesting, and we really recommend you to read it. We are also proud in our second publication, the e-MFP Members Spotlight, to showcase the impressive work our members, the e-MFP members, are doing in the area of this year's award. And I would like to congratulate and thank the 14 members who shared their experiences with the other members and with the whole financial inclusion sector. And you see the 14 names there. I won't mention them all, but it starts with A like AfD, and it ends with W like Women's World Banking. So copies of both publications are, of course, available online at the back of the room and at our stand downstairs, and also in session rooms at the Abbey. I would like now to take this occasion, the opening of our European Microfinance Week 2024, the moment where we are all together, e-MFP members and friends, to inform you that as part of our support from the Luxembourg government, in the past few months, e-MFP had a midterm evaluation, and one clear recommendation was to rebrand the European Microfinance Week and the European Microfinance Award to better align the two events with e-MFP's strategic direction and evolving focus. As you all know, our sector has diversified significantly in the past years, and we, the e-MFP board and secretariat, feel that rebranding the week and the award could help us address a broader audience while maintaining a clear identity. We will start this process very soon at the beginning of 2025. And if you have good ideas for this, if you feel very inspired, if you would like to contribute to this process, don't hesitate to let us know. In any case, stay tuned and be prepared to hear more in the coming month. And now I would like to say thank you. Thank you to our main funders, the Luxembourg Ministry of Foreign and European Affairs, Defense, Development Cooperation and Foreign Trade, and the Luxembourg Ministry of Finance. We are extremely grateful for your support, not only for us as an organization, but also for the sector in general. I would also like to thank our sponsors, Infine, our platinum sponsor, our silver sponsor, the European Investment Bank, our bronze sponsors, Bio and Frankfurt School of Finance and Management, as well as our French sponsors, Arendt and Linklaters. A big thank you goes also to our media partners, FinDev Gateway, Impact Alpha, Next Billion, Portail FinDev, for spreading the word about the conference, and also to our partner LOF, the Luxembourg House of Financial Technology. And finally, of course, I would like to thank the more than 100 panelists and speakers and moderators in our more than 30 panels, and all those who contributed actively to this conference with their excellent insights and their work. Next up, Mr. Georges Ternes, Director General for Development Cooperation and Humanitarian Aid, will give the opening remarks of this conference, and this will be followed by the opening plenary session. Mr. Ternes has taken over his position quite recently, but has worked for many years in countries in which many of our members are very active. His last post before becoming Director General was Luxembourg Ambassador to Senegal, Burkina Faso, Mali, Mauritania, and Niger, Special Envoy for the Sahel, non-resident ambassador to Ethiopia, as well as permanent representative to the African Union. Mr. Ternes, I wish you a very warm welcome to the e-MFP family. I wish you all a nice afternoon, an interesting afternoon, a great European Microfinance Week, and I invite you to make really the most of the 3 next days. So enjoy it, exchange, develop projects, share knowledge, network, talk, enjoy, and yeah, just enjoy it. Thank you very much. And now, Mr. Ternes, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, both in the room here and online. I'm here in representation of Minister Xavier Bettel, Minister of, I'll say Minister of Foreign Affairs. The list is very long of the whole denomination of the ministry. And in his name, it is a pleasure for me to welcome you as well to the 2024 edition of the European Microfinance Week. This event has become a cornerstone in the global inclusive financial sector, as witnessed by your presence both in quality and in quantity. We are very proud as Luxembourg to host this event in the middle of our city here, gathering you, experts, leaders from around the world, basically to advance, show our commitment, exchange, and advance it all in the service of financial inclusion. The numbers were quoted that we are apparently over 600 participants, is right, from over 50 countries. I didn't catch the number exactly, but they are impressive, representing international organizations, development banks, foundations, networks. Did I forget something? From our countries and from developing countries, and we hear there are pressing challenges that we need to address, and we need innovation. We need sometimes new solutions. I think the world is evolving. We need to follow and maybe get ahead. There is a gap in financial inclusion, and we need to fill that. This year, in discussions during the conference, as well as with the theme of the award that is going to be awarded tomorrow, we have put an emphasis on the importance of financial inclusion for refugees and forcibly displaced people. It will be one of the focus of one of the e-MFP, or is an issue for one of the e-MFP action groups. And as I said, it's also the theme that was proposed to identify the best actors for the microfinance award. When I say it's a very important issue, again, the numbers. We're talking about over 100 million people in the world currently forcibly displaced. The factors for this are complex, and I won't go into them. We'll have an occasion to do that in the next 2 days. The idea is to support these families, these individuals, in building, supporting resilience, restoring their livelihoods, achieving dignity. I think the human factor in this is extremely important. All of that in their host communities. These are subjects that we at the Directorate of Development Cooperation and Humanitarian are very familiar with. But this is a moment to focus the spotlight on this particular issue of financial inclusion, which might not be something evident when you talk about refugees. You think about first needs to survive, be in security. But, briefly afterwards, these subjects come into play when you are, as many of these 100 million are, not only forcibly displaced, but very long time, displaced for a very long time. Build new lives in the new circumstances, and non-inclusion into the financial system is, I guess, one of the many barriers that they meet. And we see that every day in our work, and it's therefore very good that we are trying to address this and try to innovate on that particular subject. I've now mentioned several times the European Microfinance Award ceremony. I also would like to invite you to take place, to participate. It's tomorrow evening at the European Investment Bank up in Kirchberg. As I said, it puts the spotlight on a number of organizations that are trying or are already innovating and providing services, financial services tailored to the unique circumstances of displaced populations. There were 49 applicants. We're down to 3 finalists now. And I don't know who will win. You'll have to come tomorrow evening to find out. We're very proud that the jury is presided over by Her Royal Highness, the Grand Duchess. And one more reason to look forward to both the work of the jury tomorrow and the ceremony. Back to our subject. As many of you know, Luxembourg Development Corporation is very steadfastly dedicated to sustainable development in general and through financial inclusion in particular, as we talk about it today. We are engaging in national fora, in international fora. We are financing a whole number of partnerships. Overall, as you know, Luxembourg dedicates 1%, has a goal of dedicating 1% of its GNI every year to development cooperation. All of that in contribution to achieving the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. So basically, from our little room here, I'm now trying to elevate us up to the very big picture, also to illustrate that this is not just it's not a niche subject we're talking about, but it is really something that contributes to the greater goal that we have in mind. And why am I saying this? One of the vectors that we believe in is the private sector. The private sector's active involvement is absolutely essential, indispensable in achieving the SDGs. My job is, at least to try, to reach a point where we don't need ODA anymore. Official development aid, public taxpayers' money from Luxembourg going abroad, because we will have achieved these objectives. Not sure I'm young enough to achieve that goal during my tenure, but we want to contribute and at least further this objective. As was mentioned, my previous posting was in Senegal. Public-private partnerships is something that in favor of sustainable growth was something that we really tried to further there. We will continue to do this in our partner countries. A metric that is very often used when we're talking about private sector in developing countries elsewhere as well, but also here is foreign direct investment, FDI. And I have a few numbers here just to show you, to make a point. The exact numbers are not important. In 2023, global FDI flows to developing countries reached approximately 1.25 trillion euros. That is compared to 210 billion euros in official development assistance. And this is from OECD countries. 1.525 trillion, 210 billion. So you can imagine which has the more impact, or potentially has the more impact. So what are we trying to do? We're trying to leverage. We're trying to be complementary. We're trying to reinforce each other's role. The idea is that the private sector provides capital, technology, expertise, identifies opportunities. I think that is at the core of what the private sector is doing. Public actors, financed with ODA or helped by ODA, facilitate these investments. For instance, we work on capacity building of public administrations. We work with them on better regulation. We work with them on efficient resource mobilization, taxation. Governments need taxation to be able to provide services. One doesn't really work without the other. And in my cumulative, I can't remember how many years, particularly in Africa, I've seen it every day. You might have very willing, very well-funded private initiatives that never get off the ground. You also have very ambitious public sector programs that go nowhere because the private sector is not following, or it wasn't ready, it wasn't very well identified. So these need to work together, and the numbers show that we have as ODA, we give the impetus, we smooth the way, we help where we can, and then the big guns come. Maybe it's not good to talk about guns. The big machine, the big bulldozer comes and brings the whole country forward. So that is the role that we're seeing, and our role that we see also through financial inclusion in this particular example. Now, we are in Luxembourg, so let me say a few words about Luxembourg for those that have come from afar. When I started in the ministry a number of years ago, we started this whole microfinance sector was just born, basically, and started to develop. Today, We host the headquarters of the European microfinance platforms and a bunch of other organizations that I had the pleasure of recently visiting in the European House of, in the Luxembourg House of Microfinance. Speaking about microfinance, you know, 30 years ago, that was the thing. And that's why everything is called microfinance. Today, I think it's very right that we start speaking and that we are speaking about inclusive finance because, you know, that's really what we're trying to do. Going from a small aspect to something much larger. Now, I'm very curious to see what Mr. Parr's reflections will be on the rebranding of something which is, of course, when you have a brand, you don't really want to change it that much. So I'm really curious to see what comes out of it, but I congratulate you already to attack this subject, acknowledging that there has been a change in the sector, and I'll be curious to come next year and see what came out of those reflections. And we, as far as we are involved, we will participate, of course. Right, I think I've spoken long enough. I think to give you a glance of, you know, why are we interested? Why do we think this is important? And with that, am I opening? Yes, I have the pleasure of, if needed, I know you have already worked this morning, so at least be happy that I was here during the opening of the European Microfinance Week. I wish you very fruitful discussions. Make sure you come out with innovations, especially for the sector that we were targeting this week in particular, and see most of you hopefully tomorrow then for the award of the prize to one of the 3 finalists. Thank you very much.
Can you hear me? Yes? Okay. I'm Philippe Guichandu. I'm going to be the moderator of this this next discussion together. I'm working for the Fondation Grameen Crédit Agricole, but I'm more here because I'm also the chairman of Infine, this network that gather 44 members. And as it was mentioned, we had this celebration on the 16th of October for the 10th anniversary of Infine, the 10th anniversary of the ADA chair, and the 30th anniversary of ADA. So altogether, 50 years. Can you imagine? I mean, that's a long, long journey that we have done all together. And the issue was to really discuss what will be the future of inclusive finance, and especially in emerging countries. And we had lots of discussion. I mean, may I ask who was with us on the 16th of October in this room? Quite few. You were with us? Yes, you were. Okay, thank you. And and at the same time, I think that, so the idea was really to work on this. And I think that you all found on your chairs, and the people who are standing on the back, I mean, you get it. I mean, this document, which is a little bit of kind of a summary about what has been discussed. And I, frankly speaking, want to congratulate and thanks a lot the team of ADA that has been producing this
because in such a short period of time, and with the main conclusion about what has been discussed. The issue was really to say, okay, what will be the future, where we stand, and what will be the future of inclusive finance sectors. And as you will read it, I'm sure quite carefully, I mean, we came up with, at the end of this, and that will be there, they came up with two calls for action. And these two calls for action came from the people here who are based in Luxembourg. And their main, the two calls were mainly to say that we need to work collectively on de-risking initiative in order to scale it up what we are currently doing. So that's the first one. And we have a lot of plan here in Luxembourg to do it, and I think that InFine will clearly play its role in boosting this dimension. And the second one was to say, okay, how to be sure that we really contribute to the SDG, and how we could better identify collectively the contribution of inclusive finance to the SDG, and that's where we think that research is very important, and that we can do it through, at least from here, the University of Luxembourg. So now today we're going to talk a little bit what was already discussed only by Luxembourgish people. And now we're going to see how here at more international level we can discuss about it. And the title of this session is How Inclusive Finance Will Accelerate the Path to the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. And when I was reading this, I said, okay, will, are we sure? And then I said, okay, maybe it could be could, or maybe it could be might. So I wanted to see here, I mean, would you think that we will contribute to the SDG? Raise your hands. Okay, strong willingness. Would you think we could? Not sure, but okay, we have the potential to do it. Could, okay, 2, 3, okay. Might, we might do it, but it's not so sure at all. No one. Okay, so it means that you're all ready to contribute to the things. But I think that with the debate, we might have a little bit of issues that we're going to raise to see for that. So I'm very pleased to ask my speakers to come on the floor, and we have 4 representatives. So I'm going to start with the ladies, of course, with Laura Fossey from ADA. And Ada, she's here and she's represent, okay, you're going to make it, Laura, don't worry. From, yes, so from.
And I came and it was bad.
Okay, so you do it. And Ada is an NGO, and I think it would be very interesting to see, how they see the role for it. Then we're going to have Denitsa Berkhoff. She's working for the European Bank, and of course, she's representing more the multilateral organization. And then we have 2 people from, say, rather the impact assets manager with Oksana Binzaru from Finance in Motion. And then at least one man, because at least we need to have the balance, with Sébastien Duquet from Mirova. Okay. So, and if you don't mind, I will stand up. I feel a little bit more easier to debate the session. So I think what is very important to say when we talk about inclusive finance, it's really, what are we talking about? What is it exactly? And especially compared to the finance sectors, the impact finance sectors, how do we put it there? And is it really a market? Is it something that, we believe, and I think that you believe it because you say that we will contribute to it, but do you think that how it's going to, what are the issues behind, and how are we going to make it if we really want to work on it, and especially in the emerging market? So my first question will be to you, Laura, to try first, and that will be the only slide we're going to present, don't worry. And I don't know who's going to pass the slide. Okay, anyway, Laura. So we're going to see. I think that you will explain to us a little bit how you put the inclusive finance sectors in the global finance sectors, and then, according to you, what have been or what are the main risks of these sectors or the issues that you are facing?
Yeah, thank you very much. And I think that maybe to start is a little bit to illustrate the pathway from microfinance to inclusive finance, as George already mentioned that, because we are in this topic today. It's not about definition, because we already know, all of us, what is the definition of financial inclusion. Is really more about this change. Maybe, yes, financial sector already invested 15, 20 years ago, started to invest in microfinance, because at the time, microfinance was the thing, as George mentioned before. And invested in microfinance as a sector per se became a sector to which invest maybe the ones that are as older as me. There are some, not all, but there are some. Remember the paper from Columbia University, 2007, titled Microfinance as a New Asset Class. And this demonstrated that at that time, in that period of time, there were microfinance as a silo, no? As a sector to invest. And maybe it was the first impact finance sector to which invest as well. Think evolved, and there were, during the next 20 years, the needs of local population evolved, changed. There were crises, there are still, there are more vulnerability. Climate change adds to this vulnerability of local population that already faces. And there is also change in addressing those needs. New financial service provider entered in the sector, fintech, agri-tech, banks, together with the usual suspects, more cooperatives or microfinance institutions. And then there is also the evolution of the regulator. There is different and new taxonomies that are tackling not only the financial ratio and the financial criteria to invest. There are also social, environmental, and very soon social, if we think about Europe, taxonomies that influence in the way in which we look at the sector. But there is also evidence on the tool of financial inclusion today. The tool that is different. It's no more a sector in itself, but it's a very key and concrete tool to achieve SDGs. When we provide funding to a smallholder farmer, we contribute to achieving the SDG of food protection, for example. Or when we provide a service for a family to afford scholarship fees, we contribute to a fair education. So inclusive finance today can really represent the major and the key channel to channelize financial flows towards the achieving of SDGs and the climate adaptation as well. And this is the reason why we really published this week a publication that maybe you can find in our booth, explaining where financial inclusion is today with a simple picture that put together the two different aspects of what inclusive finance is today. Inclusive in a social way and in an environmental way as well. But it's not enough. The sector face several challenges, and maybe we can mention them. For us, the most important one, that is the scale. We know that there is need of funding to achieving SDGs. We have 1.5 trillion euro in the impact investing side, but we still have only 95 billion for impact finance in emerging and frontier markets. So there is a gap. And our role is really to push impact investors to look more on the inclusive finance activities and helping them in channelize through financial service provider the correct flows. Adding to this specific challenge that is the major one, there are some that are also linked, and we have the risk perception that we discussed a lot during the roundtable, the 16th. That is, there is a gap between the perception of risk for emerging countries and for sure the real risk that is tracked and is really lower than the perception can have. We have the readiness of the investees, potential investees, that is not yet at the point to convince investors to invest in those specific organizations, financial service providers particularly. And there is the measure of impact. To be credible, we have to prove the evidence of the impact that inclusive finance is providing, is contributing to. Yeah, I can't talk for hours, you know that, so
yes.
maybe I can.
I know. And I think it was very interesting. I mean, the last time, I mean, this perception risk, which is very different, and according, especially, and it was quite interesting to see that there was a better perception risk for the inclusive sector rather than the emerging market. And that I think that's because the work, as you mentioned, I mean, the microfinance sectors that have been working on these issues for a long time, I mean, show that, I mean, the sector per se is not maybe that risky, but what might look more riskier or is in the emerging market. So I will turn on now to our representative of Impact Assets Manager, I mean, to let us know, I mean, what is on your side, because you are the one to invest, or you are the one to try to attract, because there was all this issue of scale up, to attract funders in the sectors. What is your own perception of the risk, and what have been the mechanism that you have tried to set up in order to help the sectors to keep growing? So I will start with you.
Okay, happy to actually comment on this. Indeed, the risk perception associated with the emerging market has been always on the high end. But I think in the meantime, also the actual risks have also increased, given that currently we are actually facing an increasing level of instability, uncertainty, be it at political, economic, social, and in some countries and regions also security levels. And given that we at Finance in Motion are actually an impact asset manager, we have to make it work. Regardless of the risk, regardless of the challenges, it is our duty to scale up and support and contribute to SDGs, while also coming with the right de-risking instruments. And in this regard, how we are managing this actually is by how we structure the impact investment funds that we are advising. All our funds, and currently these are 9 impact funds that are investing exclusively in emerging markets, this being 30 countries across Latin America, Middle East, North Africa, Southeast Europe, Turkey, and South Caucasus. And most of them are actually focused on climate change, climate mitigation, green transition, and also have some of them a social mandate, meaning that they aim at increasing financial inclusion, and particularly for those that are underserved and vulnerable groups, like, for example, female entrepreneurs, youth, and rural micro and small enterprises. All our funds are structured as public-private partnerships based on the so-called blended finance model. And this is where our success comes from, and where we can make a difference, is that by blending public money with the private funding, we actually can deliver on both impact and financial returns, and also offer the private investors with the de-risking instrument and give them the comfort to confidently invest in emerging markets. And the beauty of the blended finance model is that it offers attractive propositions for all types of investors, be it public or private ones. For the public investors, the business case is straightforward. They are actually by investing in blended finance models, they actually contribute to increasing financing for SDGs. They leverage the scarce public money and also deploy it in a very efficient and effective way. In this regard, the public investors are playing the so-called catalytic role. And this allows to mobilize private investors that by nature are very reluctant to invest in emerging markets for the high perceived risks. But by having the public money that actually provide the private investors with the risk cushion and also creates for them a very attractive and favorable risk-adjusted return, private investors are more confident. And actually, by investing in blended finance structure as compared to direct investment in emerging markets, they actually can ensure scale because they can invest larger tickets. They can get access to bankable assets and diversify their risks. And for those private investors that also pursue an impact objective, they can also contribute to SDGs. So to sum up, yes, actually, this is an excellent de-risking instrument that can help catalyze the needed capital for investments in emerging market, and importantly, multiply and scale up impact.
Okay, so we got the solution with blended finance here with you. What is your answer, Sebastian? I mean, I think that the approach of Mirova is slightly different.
First of all, happy to be here. After 15 years probably of attending e-MFP, the first time that I'm able to speak at the opening ceremony. I'm not anymore involved in macrofinance, so this is a message if you want to come here.
So everything is possible, you know.
So Mirova is a global asset manager. We are fully impact investing in a sense that out of the 30 billion of assets we manage, all of them are SFDR 9 as of today, and all of them are impact investing, meaning all the metrics we use, be it unlisted and non-listed assets, are very similar. If you look at natural capital solution, whether we manage a biodiversity listed fund or whether it's a natural capital sustainable agriculture product for emerging market, we use exactly the same metrics as soon as they cope with the sector we are investing in, but usually it's a bit a similar sector. And that's why we feel that from an impact narrative, we could have both a quite strong impact with listed strategy as well as with private asset one. When it comes to the risk perception, I think being involved as well in this sector for 20 years, I think there's different dimensions of the risk perception. One is clearly from the regulator. And if you were here 20 years ago, one of the discussions we had, and I think that now we gave up, was to try to convince European regulator that our product could be distributed to the retail investor through UCITS strategy. That's what we were aiming to do when we launched in 2003 the Dexia Microfinance Fund that was launched here by Dexia Asset Management Luxembourg, and I was part of that because at Planet Finance we initiated together with Luxembourg this project, or soon after with Responsibility. Our objective was to create product that could be distributed to retail investors. And it became quite gradually obvious that the various regulators throughout Europe felt that our products were not liquid enough, that the valuation was tricky, and maybe there was some credit risk. But even the two first topics, the fact that we lack liquidity and proper valuation mechanism, make it very difficult to be promoted to general public. Luckily, those that were allowed to be distributed to retail investors, so namely Blue Orchard and Responsibility product, enjoy a grandfather clause, and they were still able to attract massively, if I could say, some retail investors. But as of today, emerging markets still carries a risk of being unliquid. And for instance, at Mirova, we manage 7 billion of green bond funds. And when I was at Symbiotics and we were answering to a tender about green bond Latam fund that you won, congratulations, I tried to approach Mirova to convince them to apply to this tender launched by KfW. But from the Mirova green bond fund manager, it was obvious that the green bond, even in Latin America, a relatively mature emerging market, were difficult to value and were not liquid. So for him, the question was, how we could digest if some bonds are not performing well, how could we value them, what will be the regulator thinking of it. On this mindset of the regulator and also for large asset manager, trigger a risk perception about the difficulty of valuating, of being liquid. And for you and I, it may not seem as important, but for someone like Mirova, it is, because we are part of Natixis Group. And we don't want that a large institutional investor that maybe have invested in a blended finance fund, because we do manage blended finance and we believe it's a good solution for credit risk. So we have Allianz and the other that are investing in our blended finance fund. But Allianz is also investing 1.2 billion in other category of assets. So we don't want to be stuck because they claim that some valuation are difficult on some of the products are liquid. So we have the liquidity remain in our market difficult. And even if there have been some markets like Latin America and Southeast Asia that are more liquid, we have still difficulty. Valuation remain another topics of risk perception. And here we are in the risk perception, because if you look at the regulator on the investors, they invest in private equity in Europe. It's massive, it's easy. The regulator allows you to promote a private equity fund to the retail investor. And the valuation is much more challenging than what we do for those private equity organizations that invest in a venture company in Europe. There could be different way to value them, and still it's allowed. So that's why in valuation, I think we still have some efforts and some success to achieve to convince that the valuation is good. When it's come to credit risk, obviously we have difficulty with emerging market and country risk. And there, some blended finance structure could help, thanks to the support of the DFI and foundation and government like the Luxembourg government that is very active on that blended finance field, to help to convince private institutional investors that the country risk are tackled by a first loss that is taken by a government, a foundation, and as such as private investors, they are protected, and that could work. And then the third topic about the risk perception is impact matrix. And here it's a very challenging discussion in a sense that we could discuss that after, but it's another risk perception. Are we delivering the impact we claim? Do we have all those issues that we had about over-indebtedness on the other topics? And that's why also the distance doesn't help for convincing private investor that the impact risk is also limited in the sector where we invest.
Okay, so I stop you on the impact because that was our second discussion. So now I'm turning to you, Denitsa, to see what is the strategy of EIB, because I think it's slightly different, but you are, of course, a multilateral organization. So I think that the approach is a little bit different, but your perception of the risk, I guess, is more or less the same, but the way you try to deal with this is a little bit different.
And good afternoon, first of all. Thank you very much for being here, and I wish you wonderful 3 days in Luxembourg. Coming to your question, indeed, in terms of perception, of course, we see the same phenomena. And maybe instead of now talking a lot about the theory, let me give you one example, very recent example. We know the risk, for example, the risk in investing in women is perceived to be very high. Higher than usual because they don't have means to give collateral. They most don't own their assets. They are more vulnerable in many countries. Women are not the primary decision taker in the households, etc. So there are many reasons why the perceived risk is very high. So recently, this famous 16th of October, where you had this wonderful meeting, unfortunately, I could not attend because I was in Nairobi. And I had very interesting discussion with one of the biggest banks in Kenya, and actually one of the biggest banking groups in Africa. They have subsidiaries in many countries. So they launched a special product for women. And they shared with us, recently they did analysis of all their portfolios. The non-performing loans in Kenya have been very high for many years. We talk about 15 and 20% and up. So really very high levels. So they said, you know, the non-performing loan ratio for the portfolio of women is 2%. In comparison to 17% on average for their portfolios. So can you make 2 to 17? And I think I will not talk anymore because numbers speak for themselves. But this is exactly the role of institutions like ours to make the investors comfortable and persuade them to invest, make their own, their own experience and realize through their track records that the real risk is much lower than the perceived risk. Talking about our de-risking instruments, so actually we have also a very large, very strong equity team at EIB as well, and we do a lot of similar investment in funds with providing blending instruments and etc. But I will not repeat this part. But when we talk about funding, mostly with small exception, but mostly we talk about channeling international money of international investors, channeling investments from the developed world towards developing world. What we at EIB believe it's probably even more important is to find a way to mobilize the local private capital to go into inclusive finance. And we have been working on this for many years. So what we observe in many countries in Africa and beyond, if you look at the banking sector, and I talk about banking sector because the banking manage a big part of the private capital. And it's important to make this system work effectively. So if you look, they invest massively in government bonds. Looking at their balance sheet, 30, 40, or sometimes even more than 40% of their assets go into government bonds. And a big part of the rest go into big corporates. Now, how we can, this does not, and here maybe it's interesting, here we believe that the perceived risk, because they perceive the perceived risk in investing in government bonds, is probably here we have the opposite phenomena. The perceived risk is lower than the real risk. But anyway, it's still, we are where we are. So we try now to channel this money, a big part of this money, into the real economy. And what is the real economy in developing countries and actually also in Europe? More than 99% of all companies are medium, small, and mid-sized companies. So this is what we try to do. We have been lending for many years to banks in developing countries, also bigger amounts with very long maturity. So we provide patient long capital with the condition that they invest twice the amount into MSMEs. Plus, of course, we have additional conditions. We ask them to provide money for, sort of big part of the money should go to woman-led, woman-owned companies, or depending on the country, to refugees or young people, or now we incentivize massively financial institutions in Africa to invest in the agricultural sector. So one instrument is providing long-term patient capital. It's important for them because it's really difficult in these countries to get loans with very long maturities. And this gives them, of course, stability. But it's very often not sufficient. So we need to accompany these loans with technical assistance. As you mentioned, technical assistance is key because they need to get the necessary know-how how to lend to these new groups, how to adapt their credit assessment tools, how to adapt their systems, management information systems. And another third instrument that is extremely helpful, it's guarantees, portfolio guarantees, especially where the real risk is really a little bit higher. For example, if you want to incentivize them to not just to lend to smallholder farmers, but let's say to lend to smallholder farmers for capital adaptation, climate adaptation. So here we enter into the new business line. We don't know how whether the products will work well, how well will they work. They need a couple of years of adjustments. So there it makes perfect sense indeed to share the risk and cover part of their losses. So these are the three important instruments. And the idea is, why it is important to have these long-term loans, because we need to give them a couple of years so they can go through 2 or 3 cycles of loans. They make their experience, they look at their track record, and hopefully, and in many cases is the case, they realize, oh, indeed, the real risk is much lower than the perceived risk. And then they continue without our help. This is actually our goal, is to make ourselves redundable at some point, right? And we see, actually, it has been working, because we see after many years of not only EIB, but ODFIs and everybody here in the room, we have been working towards this, and more is going into the, actually into the SME. Many financial institutions, many banks already work with micro and small enterprises, but now we push them to go more towards women economic empowerment, towards climate adaptation. So every time one step further and deeper. And maybe just one more way, maybe a bit unconventional, different from other players. We de-risk investments, as EIB is our counter-cyclical role. So what does it mean? Usually the commercial investors, they invest, they provide capital a lot during times of economic boom, economic growth. And when economic crisis comes, they reduce their investment, some of them stop their investment, some of them even withdraw their money from the markets. And especially the cross-border, the international investors, this is the way they work. So we as EIB, we behave the opposite. When the economic crisis comes, we invest more than usually. For example, during the COVID crisis, these were probably the busiest times for us. We have been working days and nights and weekends because we have created these special programs and fast track approval process. We contacted most of our clients and we have provided them very quickly additional liquidity. We know we had this very deep liquidity crunch during the COVID crisis. And this is for the investors, the other investors in these financial institutions, in the microfinance institutions we supported through liquidity, is also a way of de-risking because they can rely on us, keeping these institutions sustainable during the crisis.
Okay, thank you. So thanks for this approach, the different tools you are using. I think this long-term strategy, I think that I remember we say that we have been there. I mean, as I said, we celebrate almost 50 years. So it's a long-term process. There was some frustration that we didn't go that fast. But anyway, so I think that one of the issues now and the second part of the debate will be definitely to try to understand, okay, we believe that we can definitely contribute to the SDG, but there's all how to prove it, how to show it that we can do it. And there's all these questions around impact. I mean, you mentioned this already a little bit, Sebastian, and I wanted to challenge you a little bit on what you mentioned also regarding TA, because we believe also that, I mean, TA is key in that process. So how at ADA are you looking at TA as one of eventually de-risking tool and a way to scale up the impact? And then behind the question of the impact, there's also the question of the measure, how you measure the impact. How can you prove that you did it at the end?
Yes, to be coherent for what I earlier mentioned, we last 3-4 years, particularly, we decided to go beyond microfinances. So asking ourselves what the purpose, what for, each time that we help a financial service provider, our partner, to develop new service, new financial service. So the question is shared with the partner, what for? What is the final purpose? So is to provide a family with clean energy, is to provide a smallholder farmer with a specific and adapted loan. This is the question that is around all the majority of our program. And this is the first step to deliver then technical assistance program. Maybe 2 examples that demonstrate how technical assistance work very closely to the investors and the investment sides that demonstrated as well how some programs can help inclusive finance to channel to reduce risk or to channel new flows that are so important for the next years. One is this new program that some of the people in the room may know, and it is a program that is dedicated to provide technical assistance to facilities of already established technical facility from investors. We work together already with 9 investors, so we help them in identify the new products to support smallholder farmers through this combination of technical assistance that we provide, and as well the investment engagement that the investor is providing. So the two things work together, and the idea to select specific programs, projects of the investor coming from the field is really to leverage the effect of a technical assistance program. Normally it's happening to me, so I'm very happy that it's happening to you, Flip.
I'm so sorry.
And this is one way to work closely and to really strengthen the financial service provider in the field in order to identify new products adapted, and also to strengthen them in order to measure the impact that they want to contribute to in the field. Another one that is more closely to the adaptation, climate adaptation, is Inclusive Finance Climate Initiative that is into regions. We developed that in Asian countries and in Central America very soon. And for this kind of program, we include in the technical assistance not only capacity building initiative and to strengthen financial service providers, that is the majority of the work that we do, but as well to create in a collaborative way a platform to reduce the risk perception and to implement facilities to de-risking the investment. And this, I think the two things are very important, together with the technical assistance provided directly to the final beneficiaries. For in some cases, final beneficiaries as this need to understand better the financial products that they receive or the condition in which they live. So they have to be involved in the creation, in the design, and in the concept of their program. So the 3 steps, the 3 layers of this holistic view are very important for us and are respected in those programs. About impact measurement is the topic and is the challenge. And sometimes I feel financial service providers in the field like squeezed between the needs of the investors that they have to demonstrate according to taxonomy's regulation, and their investors as well that have expectation on impact. They are very demanding and reports different from one investor to the other, and they are squeezed between the investor and their clients, and the lack of tools they don't have to gather the information to measure effectively the impact. I'm saying that because I don't want to feel to blame the fact that there are financial service providers don't want to measure the impact. No, it's not that. It's really a lack of tools. It's a lack of tool to gather information that, if we think about impact, we have to consider time. So the information has to be there from the beginning to the end of the measurement. We cannot measure something without considering gathering data from the beginning. And we cannot measure impact in 12 months. This is not the good way to measure impact. There is this component of time that is very important. And it has to be implemented in the strategy of the financial service provider as well, in the organization. If there is no strategy of measuring impact and contributing to creating impact, there is It's not relevant to measure something that is not useful for the organization first. It's not just about branding, because reporting impact can be helpful for the branding, impact investing, and so on. It's about learning how to better serve, how to impact better in the field. So what we do is to help financial service providers to gather, so to have tools in order to gather constantly information on impact, and also analyze data. This is the other topic and the other leg that we realize that we see in the field. There is not only a problem in gathering information, is when data are there, is not so easy to understand and to analyze them. So this is what we try to do with our partner in the field.
Yes, I'm pretty sure that it makes a lot of echo to all of us here, because I think that we are definitely all confronted to this big issues, and I think that I like what you said regarding the fact that at the end, it's very important to see how we help really the people. And what is the people at the end the benefit out of it. So I want to go back now in terms of impact. You already mentioned the needs are regarding, a little bit of the focus you have on women. And I think that it makes echo to, e-MFP is every year producing the Compass. And Compass is a way to try to understand what are the trends in the sectors and how it, what people think about it. And the first priority, that remained both for FSP and also investor, researchers, and so on, women empowerment. That was the last Compass, but it's been there for a long time. My first reaction is that we have been working on these issues for so many years, so how come it's still the first priority? So somehow it raised some issues on the way we've been working on it, and all the long way we have to work on. So could you let us know a little bit more why your focus has been on women, and also how you are able to measure the impact of what you do?
Why? Maybe let me start with a recent quote from our president. She said, investing in women is not only the right thing to do, but it's also the smart thing to do. Why it is right? Of course, because it's a very powerful social impact. Gender equality is a key human right. It's also a key objective of the EU and has also of the EAB. Why it is the smart thing to do? Because we believe there is an extremely strong business case in investing in women. A recent study of EAB shows that companies that are owned by women only produce twice as much revenues per dollar invested as companies run by men. Companies that are run by women only, we know, I think probably most of the people here in this room knows that they are more likely to invest in climate sustainable businesses. Company that have a gender equality, gender equal board and management, they're 60% more likely to reduce their own usage of water and energy. I've already shared, and there are more and more studies on the fact that women are more reliable borrowers. The repayment rates of women are usually higher on average. If the gender gap in the labor market would be closed, it will boost the GDP, world GDP, by $28 trillion a year. The female economy is bigger than the economies of China and India taken together. So we also know that, if we invest in women care more about families, communities, societies overall. So investing in women, it will bring an enormous potential. We will unlock enormous potential for economic growth. Plus, we will see faster, greener, and fairer economic transition. So this is why we as EAB, for us, it's still one of our key priorities and probably will be for a very long time. How do we measure? EIB was the first multilateral institutions to join the 2X Challenge initiative. Probably a lot of you know 2X Challenge initiative. It was launched in 2018 by the development institutions of G7 countries, and meanwhile it grew a lot. There's members are a lot of DFIs, but a lot of commercial banks as well, and private investors. And the key goal of this initiative is to promote women economic empowerment and to invest massively in gender lens initiatives. They have created a very well-defined minimum criteria of what can be considered as gender lens investment. And EIB internal measurement is informed by this criteria. Basically, we have internalized and we use them. There are a few components. The easiest one is, I think probably most of us use it. When we lend to microfinance institutions or to bank, then we count how much of these funds have been on-lended to woman-owned and woman-led companies. But there are also a few direct criteria we use. For example, in terms of ownership, especially if we talk about a little bit bigger institutions with more complex ownership structure, the percentage of women in the ownership. We look at the leadership, the percentage of women on the board or in the management committee. We look at employment, overall percentage of women in the workforce of the company, and we also look at products and services. So if a company, even if it's not woman-led, woman-owned, but a company would produce services or give products or give services which predominantly and disproportionately benefit women and girls, then this will be counted as gender lens initiative. So they are quantitative and qualitative measurements we use. And we also have what is very powerful, I think, a team, a separate independent team, independent from our investment officers, of gender specialists, and actually they control and they make sure that we have the necessary quality when we measure and we define gender lens investments. And they also define the EIB gender strategy and overall manage the entire process.
Okay, time is running, so I will just go straight to you, Oksana, because you mentioned quite a lot about the work you do on climate change. And I don't know if you remember, and if here you all have in mind, I mean, the Compass, I mean, result last year, it was quite surprising to see that, I mean, in terms of the priority for the futures, there was a big discrepancy on these issues on climate and smart agriculture between the perception of the FSP that were usually classify them, I think it was the 13th position, while for the funders and so on, it was on the first position. So we do have a gap here between, I mean, what we perceive as one of the priority and what is on the field, the reality, and how the actors, and you mentioned, I mean, the big role that they have to play. So how do you manage this? Why did you go for climate? I mean, we all know it, but, and do you have any issues in trying to measure this? It's something a little bit new as well in the sectors, which is a little bit different compared to the gender-lens approach.
I will start with the fact that one of our key strengths as a company is the local presence. And this implies a very strong knowledge and understanding of the local markets, and actually enables us to come with the relevant solutions that actually help the markets we are operating in to address the most urgent needs and challenges. And climate change being, I would say, in most of our countries, top priority. And in this regard, for example, with one of our funds, the European Fund for Southeast Europe, given that in most of its countries of operations, agriculture plays a very important role when it comes to economic development, job growth, social stability, food security, but it's also a sector that faces the most severe challenges because of the effects of the climate change. We actually have developed a dedicated product to support financing of sustainable agriculture. We did this, first of all, in order to support the small and medium-sized farmers and agricultural producers to actually enhance their business resilience and strength by increasing operational efficiency, productivity, addressing the labor force shortage, but also importantly to quicker and better adapt to the effects of the climate change. And again, building on the blended finance models and having the diverse universe of the investors, including the public investors, we have, I would say, the luxury of providing not only financing for these purposes, but also to provide all the stakeholders, be it the farmers, agricultural producers, but also our investees, which are the financial institutions, with dedicated technical assistance. Coming with on the relevance of this, particularly when sustainability is not yet a hot topic in our markets. It's a new evolving one that requires a lot of awareness raising, of building the knowledge, building the understanding, in order to, on one hand, understand the benefits that this brings to the businesses, be it the farmers, but also for the financial institutions because of the credit mitigation and reducing the credit risk for them. It's also important to actually support them to build their capacities to embrace the environmentally friendly practices and be able to confidently actually undertake those changes that will help them to scale up as businesses and support the impact, but also the management of the underlying risks that are being posed by the climate change. And again, because of the blended finance, we actually have the opportunity to provide, as also Denitsa mentioned, as a de-risking the long-term financing in local currency. And particularly for the smaller farmers and agricultural producers that face so many challenges, having the opportunity to access loans in the currency they are actually earning their income is a significant and important de-risking instrument, which again makes them more comfortable to invest in practices that will only increase going forward their business resilience and strength. So by actually supporting with the financing for longer terms and also in the currency they earn their incomes, and also bringing the knowledge and the expertise, to embrace those practices, we actually are supporting to scale up the finance on one hand, the health of the businesses, but also importantly to scale up the impact. And with regard to the challenges, you rightfully mentioned that actually developing or setting a transparent and reliable reporting system is the key challenge with the financial institution, because it takes actually an effort to walk with them in this sustainable journey, and to actually convince them to and support them actually to build the sufficient granular database in order to be able to take well-informed decisions, but also to identify the right investment opportunities, properly assess the risk, mitigate, and also manage it.
Okay. Thank you. So we see that it's possible. We see that we can work on the impact on women issues, on climate change, and so on. So what is happening? Okay, we have proven that impact is there. We want to scale it up, but at which cost? And I think that the issue here we have is that, are really investors ready to, where do they put the balance between high return on their investment, or what is the expected return on their investment, and what is the expected impact? And what I heard and what we heard at the last at the conference on the 16th of October is that, in fact, it's not so sure that, people are ready to somehow reduce a little bit their financial return for more impact or better impact. So I wanted to get your view, and that will be my last question, to you, Sebastian, on, okay, do you think that, I mean, it's possible to keep the balance? I mean, the microfinance sector was trying to keep the balance between social and financial return, but in terms of investment and so on, where do we stand and what is the trend?
Mm-hmm. Good question. Out of the 30 billion of investor, we have 95% are private, 5% are public. In blended finance fund, we have 3 blended finance funds for 1 billion in clean energy, natural capital. So in those private sector, in private investor, we have both private institutional and retail, and they are quite different depending on the expectation in terms of impact and in terms of return. And actually something that has worked very well and is still working very well for the last 20 years, it's the blended finance sector in a sense, us, fund manager, large investor investing in DFI. DFI balance sheet have grown a lot for the last 20 years. If you look 20 years back on what they are today, they have grown a lot and they have grown their involvement in the sector. And that's great. And it has been done through the support of government agencies and government that have put the equity, but it has been done by the fact that us and you actually with your retail investment, we are investing in the green bond that EIB and the other are issuing. And to give you an example, last week I was discussing with a bilateral DFI here in Europe with whom we don't work today, and they wanted to invest 30 million in the Gigaton fund that we launched a fund that finance off-grid solar equipment in Africa. And they said, but you know, it's a start of relationship. And I told them, possibly for you, but us, Mirova, we were the largest subscriber of the last 3 green bonds you issued. And actually we have 200 million of green bond issued by you. So maybe for you, it's a new relationship, but we are one of the main investors in your green bond. And those investments in green bond are done by our green bond fund that are listed, where there's around 50 million of continental European, French, but also Luxembourg, Belgium, German, through retail bank that invest in our green bond fund, that then ultimately invest in the DFI. And this sector has worked very well. And I think we should continue saying that this is one of the main impacts we could all have by the fact that we could keep on enabling the DFI to grow. Sometimes we claim that and we compete with them and we have some fight about they are not risky enough, etc. But at the end of the day, if you look at the statistics, they are still today one of the largest providers of financial inclusion sector in the market. And this is coming mostly through retail investment from you and I. So this part, why was it possible, to go back to your question, Philippe? It's because generally a retail investor person will look at a return that look like the government bond. Everywhere in the world, when you ask people how much do you expect, in Switzerland they will say 1 because government bond will offer 1, in French will say 3, and then the Georgian will say 8 because in Georgia the government bond will give you 8, not Georgia US but Georgia Caucasus. So and that's where the benchmark for them in terms of return is the government bond, and pretty low actually compared to an institutional investor that usually will ask for the government bond plus a spread, and the spread will be depending on the credit risk, on the liquidity risk, etc. So usually you have a difference between 200, 300, 400% between what a retail investor is asking and what a private institutional investor is asking. And so for the retail investor, that's where actually for us that's where we could hope to have more product, because the expectation of return is low. And secondly, the granularity is high. It's for us 30 million of different persons throughout Europe. It's not one single investor. So if one doesn't want, the 12 million others may stay. If you are lucky with 1 or 2 large institutional investors, they leave the sector tomorrow, you have no money. And thirdly, they stay long. Usually a retail investor invests for 5, 6, 7 years, even more in their life insurance program or whatever, where an institutional investor could be sometimes shorter. So I think this retail part, we should probably, as a sector, claim more what we have achieved generally. And it's true that it's mostly non-classical MIV fund that have invested in those DFI balance sheet on the green bond. It's mostly the large player of this world, JP Morgan, Natixis, us, and the other. But that's where also we have a strong impact in the sector. When it's come to the private institutional investor, it's true that it has been challenging. Let's be honest, for the last 20 years, it has not developed as we were expecting. And as Oksana perfectly pointed out, the perception of risk is higher. If you look at some of the green bond fund or the blended finance fund that you manage or that we manage, today we have a higher spread than we used to have to have private investor investing in our fund. Basically, when we are issuing notes to finance a blended finance fund, in the past it was SOFR or Euribor plus 150, 170 bips. No, a lot of times they ask for 200, they ask for 250 and 300 bips. So it's not only that the interest rate have gone up, but also the credit risk perception has been up. And it's particularly attached to the fact that they perceive this risk at higher because of the country risk issue that we have in some part of Africa, in the Middle East, and in Eastern Europe. So that explains why also it has been difficult, but we have also to highlight that one of the difficulties is the reputation risk. A lot of private institutional investors are quite afraid of investing in emerging markets because of the reputation risk. And here as well, the risk perception remains pretty high to what kind of reputation they take. If you take the banks, for instance, a lot of European banks do not simply want to invest in DRC. At Symbiotics, when I was promoting RegMIFA, a blended finance fund that invests in sub-Saharan African macrofinance institution, a lot of the banks wanted to do it, but then they were blocked by the compliance. They say, oh, but you have one portfolio in DRC. We could not invest directly or indirectly in DRC. And so even if they wanted to do for the risk return perspective, for the reputation risk, that's higher. For the retail investors, the reputation risk is completely different. They will not really care of those country risk issues. They will more care of what is the impact you claim to have versus what is really your impact. If I invest in macrofinance, is it really macrofinance? If I invest in biodiversity, is it really biodiversity? If I invest in the listed women diversity fund from Mirova, I am really encouraging women empowerment and the like. And for that, one of the difficulties we have in our sector compared to others is the lack of data. I mean, it was mentioned again this morning and etc. in terms of ESG. If you are active in both listed and non-listed markets, you could see that in listed markets, indeed, it could be seen as more ESG, window dressing, etc., whatever you feel about it. But at the end of the day, you have a lot of statistics, a lot of ESG data, a lot of ESG ratings, sometimes done by 2, 3, 4, 5 different ESG rating providers. If you invest, as we all do with our blended finance fund, in local projects, you don't have any of those. You don't have any credit risk rating, you don't have any ESG rating, you barely have someone cross-checking the data on the figures, and it goes with the fact that you have to have a lot of staff going to the ground, etc. So if you look at us, 18 billion of listed assets managed more or less by 30%, and then 1 billion of blended finance fund managed by 100%. That's what you have in Mirova, because similarly than you, we all have to go to the ground, collect the data, etc. And the difficulties have is that those data are not really cross-checked, are not audited, they are not validated. And that's where it could go again for a difficulty from the regulator. And that's something we are now experiencing. Us at Mirova, for the last fund, we are asking the regulator to approve in SFDR9. The regulator start to be a bit careful about SFDR9. They start to be a bit more conservative. They are themselves afraid of the pressure they could get from you and I, that is to say the general public, about whether it is natural capital, whether it is green, whether it meets the EU taxonomy, etc. And we start to receive more and more questions. And actually, we may have what has happened in the past to say, well, if we take too much risk, if the regulator believes we take too much risk by having an SFDR product that goes in a market where it's difficult to cross-check our view of the impact, we may decide not to go because we will simply block by the regulator to go. And it starts again, I would say again, because this is what happened in macrofinance a long time ago, that the regulator may feel you don't have enough different opinion about what is really a CO2 emission avoidance project in a solar in Africa. If you are not able to cross-check that with 2 or 3 different sources, then please don't consider this is a matrix you could use for SFDR9. And we start to have such kind of question from the regulator on our side. And then if you are not able to say this is SFDR9, then what it is at the end of the day. So I think here we have also the issue of the data on the impact metrics we are using. We know we are very sure of what we report. But again, if you don't have 2 or 3 different providers, if you are not able to cross-check that, then the regulator, some regulator, not all, maybe here in Luxembourg, CCSF might be a bit more easy to deal with than others, but the German, the French regulator, I know them pretty well, they may consider that you are not able to cross-check this impact metrics with 2 or 3 external providers, then don't report on it. And if you are not able to report on it, how could you classify that as a SFDR9 product? So that's why, if you look at the market, a lot of our peers have decided to migrate the fund to SFDR 8. Some of them because they were doing greenwashing, etc., probably, but a lot of others, they were simply scared of the reputation risk they may take, or simply pushed by the regulator and say, well, it might be easier. And then again, we may have the difficulty to promote massively the impact we are doing because of this lack of cross-checking, basically.
Thank you. Yes, I know. I know about the timing. It's a little bit sad to end up with this with this perception that I mean people are finding it not getting what they are expecting, and at the end, I mean, it's counterproductive for the way we're going to work. So if we have one question from the room, I'm ready to take it, but only one. Otherwise, yeah, there's one question there. Okay, so let's do it. Please, yes, that's you. And I'm sorry, I cannot take more questions, but at least one, so that we feel that we let you participate, you know, and I can say at the end, okay, at least we had one question. Okay, go ahead. Okay. Okay.
Well, it's good about your European bank. Speak about the third party, the fund provider, microfinance, economy. But I want to tell you that in Africa, namely Cameroon, microfinance still behave like bank. So when people need the loan, they still ask the loan processing fees that people don't have. When they have the loan, they ask the fees to place the loan in your account. That people don't have. So I think you need to work also, you need to include in your supply chain financing the fintech, because fintech are more specialized to understand the real problem of the real economy. Me, for example, we finance the mobility entrepreneurs, so finance the data. So I know exactly the role of these people, and still to give them money, we finance directly the assets. So we are sure that the money go for assets. My father, the other fathers come and finance the farmer. Don't give them money. They finance directly the lenders. So I think that if you want to measure the impact of your investment, you need to include in your stakeholder the fintech tools, the data to help you to measure your business. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that I hope you will still be here on Friday, because I think the last plenary session is, I can't remember exactly what is the title, but I think something like, is the future of inclusive finance in the fintech. So, and maybe that's one of the reasons why we didn't include them, but clearly, and I think it was somehow mentioned with all these issues of data collection and so on, where I think that definitely new technology can be of help. So we have to conclude. I mean, we remember, I mean, there was this call, I mean, following our October 16 meeting, we had this call for actions, and there were two, and there was one, I think if you look at it, where it's written that the Luxembourgish actors want to do something on working collectively on the de-risking solutions. So I'm just wondering, I mean, should it be only the Luxembourgish people, or should it be all of us? So I think that I'm here, I think it was the main reason why we organized this roundtable, is to try to see if it will be only the Luxembourgish people that will do things, and they can do it very well, as we know. But I mean, I think that, of course, if we do it all together, it will be certainly much, much better. So aside from that, and there was also all the question on research and how to collect data and so on. So I remember, and there was one of the speakers at the roundtable from EcoBank. And you know, EcoBank is one of the main regional banks in Africa. And he said, when there is a will, there is a way. And I like it so much. So you said there is a will. What will be the way? So you have 1 minute to say what will be the way.
Still have time.
Yes, okay. And then we conclude it.
Yes, maybe it's obvious, but collaboration and put the things together. I think that we face challenges that we cannot afford alone. And the most important thing is to collaborate, put different tools together, TA together with guarantees, together with investor, etc. A dream maybe is to convince 10% at least. I'm not so ambitious, but 10% of the 1.5 trillion of impact investor to reduce their expectation on financial returns and to shift from maximizing financial return to maximizing impact while getting financial returns and while managing risk rather than the mainstream finance.
Okay, Denitsa, what is your way?
So one way, difficult to say, but maybe because we have now spent a lot of time in the last few minutes to talk about measurement and etc. So I think the way would be, my dream would be one day that we, all investors, all financiers, we have the same reporting and monitoring requirements.
Okay, so I think it's good reaction in the room.
This will ease the work of everyone, will be much more efficient.
That will ease for sure. But that's a nice dream, very nice and concrete one. Okay, Oksana, what is the way?
The success lies in the power of partnerships, because only together we can do much more, we can achieve higher. And as Laura also mentioned, it takes sustained collaborative effort in order to attract the needed capital and create the value and the impact that is needed to contribute to SDGs. So partnerships.
Okay, Sébastien?
I think the willingness, our will, our energy is the best way, because there's different ways we could structure different kind of products, we could innovate, etc. But if we look at what we have been all doing the last 20 years, the success we had, and I think it's a lot of energy. So I think the only way is to keep this energy and to go on with that. And then we may find different ways to tackle what the challenge we have ahead of us.
Okay, so I think that we all have this energy, I'm pretty sure. So I wish you, to keep on discussing about all these subjects during the next three days, have dreams and keep collaborating together, because I fully agree that it's one of the ways. Thanks a lot for your patience.